Well, everyone, it's time for us to go and take a look at the Nothing Phone 2A and compare it against the iPhone 13 and see which particular phone is a better one for you. Now, I will definitely tell you between both these devices, they're both very different. The iPhone 13 on the front had a 6 point, I'll get into that in a second, but the iPhone 13, much smaller phone, but it came out in 2021. The Nothing Phone 2A is a brand new budget phone that costs about $350. This one is still being sold for about $600. This one's $350. So let's go and see how they both compare. If you want to pick up either one of these devices, though, links will be down in the description. You can get them from there. You can help support the channel at the same time. Now, starting off with the outside, the iPhone 13 on the front of this particular phone had a 6.1-inch Super Retina XDR OLED display, and it was a pretty good-looking panel. I thought this phone looked really good when it first came out, and I still think it looks pretty solid. It's definitely not perfect by any means, but I do think if you're going to go ahead and use some sort of device, this thing's actually not that bad, and it still has a lot of capability when it comes down to it. You have the notch up top, which is still perfectly fine, and it's a 60 hertz panel though, so just kind of keep that in mind at the end of the day. I do think if you're going to use some sort of device, it could be worse, but definitely this one is a little bit, tiny bit outdated. The Nothing Phone 2-way though is a little bit, I would say, of a better panel. So I do think, this is a bigger 6.7-inch AMOLED display on this particular phone. So that right there is another big thing to keep in mind here is a much bigger phone. So if you're trying to get some sort of a bigger device, this one is going to be giving you that there. But also, it's a 120 hertz display too, which is very good. Still 1080p. The viewing angles aren't necessarily the best, but it's actually not too bad. You're getting pretty thin bezels around it. You're getting a hole punch display too. It is very surprising that at $350, this phone is giving you this type of display, which is actually very surprising. And I would probably argue in some ways it might be a nicer display overall than the iPhone 13s. Wouldn't be out of the ordinary. Now, the rest of the body on the Nothing Phone 2 is pretty much built out of plastic. So that right there is a big thing to keep in mind. If you're wanting a better built phone, definitely the iPhone 13. This thing's built literally out of aluminum. The Nothing Phone 2 is built out of plastic. You can just tell as I'm tapping this one. There's a really big difference there. The 13 is definitely more stable. You can see the volume buttons here. At the top, not much going on. At the bottom, you're getting a lightning port on the iPhone 13. On the Nothing Phone 2A, you are getting that USB Type-C port, which is very nice to have. I love USB-C, and you are definitely going to be getting that type of capability on the Nothing Phone 2A, which is actually very, very nice. On the backside, another pretty big difference here on the Nothing Phone 2A wide angle and ultra wide. Same thing with the iPhone 13. The thing to keep in mind here, though, is that with the iPhone 13, you are getting a full-on glass back on this particular device. The Nothing Phone 2A, on the other hand, is only going to be giving you a plastic back. So that right there is another big difference. Even you can hear it right there, what the difference is. Another big thing, you're actually not getting wireless charging on the Nothing Phone 2A either, which is actually pretty concerning. If you were wanting a better phone, definitely something like the Nothing Phone 2A may not be giving you that. So that's kind of another concerning thing between both, but beyond both is not the biggest deal in the world. You're still going to be getting very good phones between both. Now beyond that, you are getting MagSafe here and wireless charging on the iPhone 13, which like I mentioned is kind of a nice thing going on there too. And on the outside, that kind of covers it up there for the most part. Now, in terms of software and longevity, if you're wanting the longer lasting phone, I'm not too sure which one's going to be the longer lasting one here. I think there's a chance where a device like the iPhone 13 is probably still going to outlast something like the Nothing Phone 2A, but the Nothing Phone 2A is still going to be supported for, probably another couple versions of Android, but I'm not 100% too sure here. Again, we're going to have to kind of see what happens, but I do think for the most part, between both, they're both going to be supported for the time being. Now let's go and do a speed comparison between both of these. The iPhone 13 has that Apple A15 Bionic chip inside of it with 4 gigabytes of RAM, where the Nothing Phone 2A has that MediaTek Dimensity 7200 Pro chipset with 8 or 12 gigabytes of RAM. So let's go and see which one's the faster phone between both. Okay, all the apps are cleared out in the background as you can tell, so let's get into it. Phone calls 3, 2, 1. I think the iPhone 13 probably was faster there. Camera 3, 2, 1. Okay, let's take a photo. Okay, I think the 13 was faster. Let's go and get into their app stores. 3, 2, 1. Okay, I don't know why I don't have internet here. That's very strange. I don't know why there's always something like that happens. Getting into some third-party applications. Let's get into Temple Run 2, 3, 2, 1. Now, this is not the craziest, most intense game of all time. It's a pretty basic one when it kind of comes down to it. So let's go and see. They're both going to be downloading some content or whatever, which is going to be whatever. One of them has a volume on, which might be this one. Nope, it's this one. It's weird. I turned the volume down on all these, but now they randomly came back up. almost identically the same thing as far as I could tell. There really wasn't that big of a difference. Getting into some gameplay, let's see if there's any big difference here, which I don't really think there's going to be. But that's still a pretty crazy thing here that both these devices were like at that level. So hopping out of both of these right here, and so I'm going to, it's a different one, Snapchat 321. Okay, Nothing Phone 2 I think was faster. Let's get into Snake for Blocks 321. And almost identically the same thing as well. Getting into some gameplay here, let's see if there's any big difference, which there might not be. Okay, let's go hop out of both of these. Little glitches on the Nothing Phone 2A. Netflix 321. Again, the Wi-Fi is being annoying, so we'll just load this one. Quizlet, which I don't have. Bofa 321. Nothing Phone 2 I think was the faster one. The original Temper one, 321. So again, this one is going to be pretty basic for the most part. Again, it's not the most intense game of all time. And they both kind of had the same thing. Let's go and get into a new game and see how fast it takes them to kind of load into it. And I think it's, again, almost identically the same thing. You're really not going to be getting like too many differences when it comes down to this stuff. Hopping out of these two, let's go and get into Genshin Impact. Do I have that here? No, I do not. I wonder if I have Subway Surfers. I do. Let's try that. 3, 2, 1. Now, I will tell you, from the few games that I've tested so far, it is actually quite surprising to me how good of a job both these phones have been doing. The Nothing Phone 2A is very surprising to me because that is the phone that is significantly cheaper. Even now that the iPhone 13 is still out, like it's surprising to me how good of a job, the Nothing Phone 2A has been doing. Is the Nothing Phone 2A the better phone because it's been performing so well against a previously expensive phone? Even now it's kind of expensive. Was the iPhone 13 doing the better job because it's the older phone keeping up with the newer budget phone? I'm not really too sure the way to look at it, but for the most part, that kind of covers it up, the speed comparison. Now, in terms of the camera side of things, both these phones, as I mentioned before, have a dual camera setup on the backside. So they both have wide and ultra wide cameras, which is very nice to have. I like having both those types of phones and both those types of cameras. Now, the big difference though is that with the iPhone 13, you're able to do 4K at 60 on the front and the back. With a device like, the Nothing Phone 2A, not quite the same. You're getting low resolutions that you can film in, but it's still like perfectly fine for the most part. The phone like the iPhone 13, I've always felt like this was a very good camera for the most part. I really liked this camera when it first came out, and I still think it's completely very solid. You're getting 5x zoom here, you're getting 0.5x zoom there, which is very, very nice. And just that right there alone is a pretty cool thing to keep in mind with this type of device. Like, you're able to get very good type of capability. And I do think this, again, in and of itself, is a very, very cool thing. Video mode, cinematic mode, slow mode, time lapse, portrait mode, panorama mode. There's some really good stuff here, which is something that's really cool. And I definitely would tell you at the end of the day, from that perspective, it's a pretty good camera. It's something that I actually do like a lot, and it gets the job done at the end of the day. With the Nothing Phone 2A, this is also, it's a good enough camera for the most part. Like, I will tell you, like, if you're going to go through and use some sort of camera, like, this thing is good enough for the most part. You're getting 10x zoom here, you're getting 0.6x zoom here. I think it's good enough. You have video mode, slow mode, you have some other stuff here too, portrait mode, the more mode here. It's a good camera, I like it, but it's not really that good compared to the iPhone 13. I do think the iPhone 13's camera is probably better when it comes down to it. So, to kind of sum it up, what I'll definitely tell you, I definitely do think a phone like the Nothing Phone 2A is very surprising for the dollar value. I think it's a very good, device when it comes down to it. Overall, I think the battery life of this phone is good. The 120 hertz display is very surprising. You're getting a pretty good built phone. The design language, the glyph interface is really cool too. But you are missing out on things like wireless charging. I don't think there's any IP certification on this phone. The resolutions to film and like the cameras aren't really that great, but everything else about this phone is actually not that bad. The iPhone 13 though, I think is still like a better phone. It feels a lot more premium. It feels like a way more expensive phone. You're getting I would say not a better display, but sometimes maybe a better looking one sometimes, but otherwise I think both these phones are great and you can't really go wrong with either one of these. So for that kind of covers it up there. If you have any other thoughts or questions, let me know in the comment section below. Hit the like button, that would mean so much, but definitely hit that subscribe button. More importantly than everything else, I love every single one of you guys. Hopefully I'll catch you guys in the next video.